Well, this is Elise Hurst, the star of the show. At least I think it's Elise Hurst. We published it. I think she sent a locum over. Just forgot to change the hair colour.
It's
but looking very glamorous.
Thank you.
I've responded to the evening. I've got my yellow shirt on, so we're extending the glamour. We've got Bolly. We've got a most fabulous show. This really is one of the most beautiful things. In fact, I'm going to quote from quite justified hyperbole. This is me speaking. In 50 years of dealing, this is the most fantastical, imaginative and beautifully surreal series of illustrative image I have ever exhibited.
Well said.
Yeah.
So, each heart out, Arthur Rackham. They are very special. We knew how special they are when we first signed her up to be in our illustrators 3 years ago, in the illustrators in November, which is, I have to tell you, especially the foreigners here, there's a few of them from Australia, the annual illustrators show is the centre of the world for illustration worldwide. And you were the star of it 3 years ago. So we had to have you back soon as your publishers were sensible to publish you again. And they're here tonight, so thank you for turning up.
Yeah, bye-bye.
But thank you most of all for coming all the way from Melbourne. So you gave her a chair before, we'll give her another chair. Now, the really sad thing about the evening is that I've been sacked. I'm not actually speaking tonight. This is the debut for two very junior members of the gallery team, particularly Adina. It's me, I got very neurotic about the thought of FedEx losing the artwork. So I sent Adina over to Melbourne to pick it up. So here we have it, the most fantastical, beautiful set of illustrations. For me, I picked out a phrase that you quoted. I said, who quoted this? It's brilliant. You said, I did. There's a phrase in there which says, incomplete narrative. Isn't that what it says?
Yeah.
And that you look at it, she's doing something for you. Her imagination is soaring. But when you look at it, you think you go off in all sorts of directions. You can do, and particularly great for kids, but especially great for adults.
Oh, yes.
This is beyond dreamlike. You can put anything you like to it. This is the most beautiful, incomplete narrative ever. But in order to fill in a few of the gaps, Phoebe and Adina will interrogate this brilliant artist. So, Elise Hurst.
Lovely, let's begin. So first off, what kind of books and storytelling were you brought up with? And how do you think these have influenced your work?
Well, there's a really funny thing that happens in Australia, which my friends will know, is that we weren't really brought up on Australian stuff, we were brought up on British stuff. So everything I remember from my childhood it's Enid Blyton, it's Arthur Rackham, it's all of these wonderful stories. It's lots of BBC, it's To the Manboard, and not Australian comedians, it's the two Ronnies. I mean, that's how British it was in Australia. So when I think about where my imagination lives, it's here. But it's a really weird version of here, and it's made up of little bits of probably things that never actually really existed, but they're in stories. And so for me, it's all of that stuff, but it's a weird version of it that's in my head. But also I was looking at a lot of etchings and artworks from a very long time ago, which somehow got to be incredibly influential for me. So Albrecht Dürer and Gustave Doré, and it just blew my mind that people could use line to capture everything. You know, when I looked at that work, I saw colour. It was amazing, and the light was incredible, and the movement was incredible. And so, you know, when I started doodling and messing around, that was the challenge. That's what I loved, and that was just hugely influential to me. all that great apocalyptic stuff.
So looking at your work, to us, it clearly has some sort of mythological elements to it. Was that something that influenced your work, or if not, what was that influenced your work in sort of like that sense?
Well, I think there's that wonderful thing in your brain, isn't it, that you remember little fragments of things that really stick with you. So there's Enid Blyton, of course, and there's all her wonderful characters. So for me, it's perfectly normal to have all these anthropomorphic creatures, and that's why it's not very many Australian animals, but it's lots of, you get all of your British creatures, especially. I forgot what the question was.
Oh, the mythological. So
yes.
It feels very mythological.
But I was also reading like Celtic mythology, and when I went to university, I was studying Celtic mythology and Old Norse, and studying archaeology and lots of history. So that's just what storytelling is to me. It's a weird mixture of all those things.
And does the sort of wordless side of the book, does that come from that sort of mouth to mouth storytelling aspect, or what was it that drew you to it, to the wordless format?
I think it was basically from doodling. So I'll give you the story of kind of how all this stuff happened. So I was illustrating for quite a long time for other people, and you get your brief and you have a certain amount of time, not very long, to do it, and so you charge in, you do your illustration. While you're doing that, you think you're trying to set up the next job, and while you're setting up that job and finishing this one off, you're doing roughs for the job that's after that, and it's this awful cascading snowball of a thing that just gives you no time. And so you're focused on other people's needs, but you're not really focused on the work that would come from in you if you had that time. And any illustrators here who work to a brief like that probably know about this. So I started carrying around a tiny little moleskin sketchbook that someone gave me. And this was pre-phones, thank God, so that when I stood in a queue, I was bored, and I would actually pull out a sketchbook and I would just start to draw. And because I only maybe had 10 minutes, or coffee time, it would just be a little fragment of a drawing, and then away it goes. And then the next time I'm waiting somewhere else, open it up, do another little bit. But it's a different day, it's a different state of mind, it's a different set of influences around you. And so the progression of all these little tiny bits of drawings was very slow and very weird. And it became this really interesting way to work, where you didn't sit down, work it out, have a brief, you actually allowed it to evolve. And so by doing that, my style evolved, which I don't actually think I had one before that, because you really go back to your whole doodling thing. Every time I made a mistake, because I went straight into pen, I had to work out how to problem solve that and change, and that led to little discoveries and new paths that wouldn't have happened any other way, which is amazing. And they became these really weird little scenes, and they were populated by all that stuff we were talking about, little bits of mythology, all these little characters, anthropomorphic characters, the line work that I adored so much from etchings and old drawings. And as I drew these things and people started seeing them, people started to tell me the stories of what they were seeing. And I realised it was this strangely powerful thing where, because it was happening the way it was happening, it was full of so many little disparate elements that were drawn from this great collective conscious that we have. People were really responding to it in an amazing way. And that side of it is what's grown eventually into this work, where finally, where's Kobe, my publisher? I can't see where he is. Anyway, I just want to say thank you to Kobe, because he was the first person who saw this work, and when I presented him with the idea of actually getting it all together and creating a special book, he was the one who said, yeah, okay, let's do this, and we'll get it out into the world and present this stuff to people. So that's how the whole thing came about, and it really was very incremental. And the thing that absolutely terrifies me is that if it had to happen now now that I have a phone and I don't tend to get bored, and I don't tend to be not looking at something if you're waiting in a queue, would it happen? I don't know. It worries me that we don't have bored time anymore. So I'm trying to put my phone away as often as I can because I think it's really important. Yeah.
I know you've said before that you like to think of the audience for the book as being mostly adults, it's not a children's book.
Yeah.
So is that part of your intention when you were doing the book to sort of bring it to all ages?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So people assume it's for kids, but it's not. They're allowed to look at it. I'm very, very encouraging that they should be allowed to. No, that was the interesting thing. So when I did art markets for quite a number of years, and I would get the little pictures from my moleskins, scan them, spend I don't know how long trying to take out all evidence of the crease. Those little moleskin books have a crease which is diabolical. And I would display them as prints, and the people who would come around who really responded to them were adults. And it was astounding. Different people would look at the same pictures and they would interpret them so differently because they would just pick on one detail and say, oh, this is exactly like, and it'd be a thing I'd never heard of in my life. But it was really individual and it was really wistful. So they would say, I miss this. I used to have this in my life. I loved it when I was a child. I used to write stories. I used to draw. And there's this feeling that you're not meant to do that anymore as an adult, which is stupid. It's terrible because our imaginations are incredible and they are intrinsic to how we operate. You know, they are problem solving. They are working your way around the difficulties in your life. They are the way we kind of interpret the world and share things with people. And yet we get told, when you're an adult, you fit in this little box and you're this shape and you don't do that anymore. And people were genuinely sad and they loved it that I'm standing there giving them permission to get back into all that and really enthusiastically supporting them and saying, no, you should definitely get back into that. And so the first book happened during COVID, basically. So I talked to the publisher and I said that I was basically picturing all these people I'd met, all these thousands of conversations I'd had, and I was just thinking, I really wish I could give them a compilation of doors to step through. You know, get out of the doom scrolling, go somewhere imaginative, and just feel revived. So that's where that all goes. And yeah, so adults. I really want adults to have this and feel it like they are allowed to just dream again. That would be good.
So once you have all this inspiration and you are, sit down and draw, can you just talk us through how you go on about it, how you start a drawing and what your process is?
Yeah, it's a little bit shocking. So some of these had a very strong concept right from the start because there's not a lot to them. And I'm very proud of some of those because the design of them is very, very strong and I feel very restrained and grown up in the way that I did them. And other ones are just, I've learned to start in a particular corner and all I need is the character, the first character and a broad situation and it just goes from there. So I don't necessarily plan the whole thing. I don't do it all in pencil first. I do find reference for everything because I want this world to feel plausible. I don't want it to be just this weirdly proportioned concoction. But I really do just slowly work my way through all the possibilities until I know what the next step is. And so really what's happening is I've trained up my subconscious to kind of chime when the right idea pops into my head. So as you can probably guess, these take a little while. They're not quick. So, and there's a lot of repetitious stroke making, which is both zen and not great for the fingers. But while you're doing that, you're able to think, you're free to think. So it is very calm and it's very lovely and you're sifting through all the possibilities of what could come next and you know what would fit this scene, who is that person looking at, what could be coming around the corner, and like I said, the right thing, when it pops into your head, it's almost like you hear a note and it's like, that's the one. And so then you find the reference and you start putting that in, and then as you're working on that, you're sifting through to find out what the next thing is. And it's this process that has been evolving over a great many years, and it really is allowing your all those hidden stories and elements from your life to just come out and find their place. And I love that it ends up becoming peopled with lots of little micro stories everywhere. And so that's why it's so important who it is that looks at it, because it changes what the story is all about depending on who's looking at it. Like the perspective of the viewer is vital. And I love that it's going to be different for everybody, and it'll be different at different times of their lives as well. It doesn't have to ever be set. Yeah. Can't remember the question.
Perfectly answered. Yes. We wanted to draw everyone's attention to the wonderful window drawing that Elise has done upstairs. If you haven't seen it, go have a look afterwards. It's very lovely. Your illustrations clearly translate well onto other mediums. And we wanted to ask, are there any other projects other than books that you'd like to work on in the future? Like film, animation, things like that.
Animation would be lots and lots of the same picture, wouldn't it? But just slightly different. I don't think my work would go very well for that, I think. I did actually get started on a graphic novel once. It wasn't meant to be a graphic novel. It was meant to just be a wordless book. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I ended up actually buying myself out of the contract because I realised I don't want to do a graphic novel. This will take me like the next 10 years because I wanted to use my style, and I don't just want to do little sketchy things. So not that. But I actually grew up doing, when I was a kid, doing traditional art. So my mother and all her family are traditional artists, and so that was just a normal thing that you do. When I was a kid, if I was sick in bed, my mum would come, put a tray down, plonk a thing of flowers in front of me, give me a pen and paper and say, there you go, draw that. So that stuff was normal. So I kind of just thought, well, I should learn to do really good portraits if I can, and landscapes and still life, and way too many self-portraits, looking really cross at myself because it wasn't going very well. So that was fantastic, because now with all this work I can bring that level of the realism into the stuff that I do, because I want these worlds to feel weird but possible. So like there's a bit of a logic. You won't be finding dragons with tiny little wings. We've talked about that already. These things need to actually work. So I would love to get back into doing big oil paintings of this world. My first solo show was a whole lot of really huge work, which looked very vintage, and that was nice. And that was the moment where I really, really saw how people responded to the stuff. So it was right in the middle of the city in Melbourne, and it was in a spot where you get lots of office workers coming through in their lunch break. And I remember being in there, and this smart young man walks in his suit, he's got his coffee, and he stands in front of this, it's a cat with different coloured eyes, and it's in like this amazingly glamorous gown. It's got a martini, it's got the smoking, it's got the cigarette in the cigarette holder, and she's just staring down out at the person. And I remember this chap standing in front of her and saying, you know, she's strong, but she's fragile. And he started telling me all about this cat. And it was just the best thing. And then 10 minutes later, another woman comes in. She's just been to the gym. She's kind of standing there looking at them. And she tells me its life story. And it's completely different. And then after about 10 minutes of rapid talk, she stops and says, I think I'm just talking about myself. Which was brilliant, because it's like, yes, that's what this is. And people would stand in front of things, and the same picture, someone would laugh, and then the next person would actually cry. Because, and it was nothing to do with the picture really, it was where they went. And I just thought, this is really cool. You know, it's being able to connect to people like that and bring something out is powerful and worth doing.
What
So-
about a big mural? I'd love you to do that.
Wow.
To have some proper descriptive, narrative, exciting, stimulating art on a wall instead of
We don't need
another
that. AI
banal
does it for us.
stencil by Banksy.
I've seen those AI things. They put everything in there. Yeah, that would be fun. That would, oh God, that would be interesting.
So people will then look at it instead of trying to nick it.
Yeah, yeah, that would be interesting. Mm.
Little
One-
project for you.
Yeah.
Anybody got a wall spare?
You're joking, aren't you?
No.
I did a mural recently. It was in my house. When our kitchen got renovated too many years ago, I said to the builders, "Oh, don't worry about tiling behind the splashback. I'll do that. I like to think I'm handy." And you know, if you're an artist, you're meant to be good with your hands. You should be able to do everything. And I always feel like I should be able to do everything. Fast forward about 12 years, nothing has happened. And I thought, oh, bugger it. So I plastered the thing, got out some old house paint, and I started painting all over it instead. Gessoed it first. And I did this really fun scene. It's like these surging waves, and there's a little boat in the background with a little character and a bear or something. And it wasn't until I got to the end and I thought, oh, it's a splashback. And I just painted a pun right in the middle of the kitchen. It was so much fun.
Or do you shellac it?
Yeah, my
Yes.
husband came in and actually properly
Yes.
coated it afterwards. And I just thought, oh, there we go. So I can do puns. If anyone needs a pun, I can do a pun in your house. So, yeah, that would be fun. Yeah.
Anybody like to
more big stuff.
ask a question? I'm sure there
Yes.
must be.
Yes.
Jane.
Thank you. Amazing work. When you create them, it's really interesting listening to your sort of process. But
Or lack of.
inevitably, do you create your own little story around the characters and what they're doing?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes I delight in not knowing.
Well,
So there's a scene over there with the green room and the cloud that has floated in the window. I am open to knowing what the hell is going on in that picture because I really don't know. But I was once with my family on a family holiday when I was a kid, and we were somewhere in deepest, darkest Malaysia, up on a hill station. And it was in the middle of the jungle where everything is supersized. So if you see a moth, it's not a moth, it's a moth. And we woke up in the morning, opened the door, and a cloud drifted in. And it was the most amazing thing. It kept its shape. It was just a little cloud. It drifted through the house. And we went and opened the other door, and it drifted out again. And so that stuck with me. That one, I thought, well, I'm going to be using that one day. And so a cloud has drifted in the window, or maybe it's drifting out again. I don't know. That's open. And there's just all these little details in it. The carpet makes me think of my grandparents' carpet, which was very hushed. It made the whole house hush. So, you know, there's all these little things in it that I have story associated with each of those things, but the whole conglomerate.
do you find you have favourite characters that you go back to?
Yeah.
So maybe they have a bit of a character for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. In the Moleskines, I've got a little girl who's popped in about 4 times, and then she appeared in the back of a taxi in a painting once.
No.
And she really did appear. So I'd done the picture of a bear driving a taxi, and it was this lovely big oil painting. And I'm looking at it thinking, oh, there's something missing. Trying to work out what that was. And as I said, as I'm painting, I'm thinking of all the things that could be missing. And the idea of the girl popped in. It's like, whoa, okay, that's her. Painted her, and then thought, well, can't sell this now, because I obviously need to know her story. Like, she's obviously important to me. She keeps popping up in these different pictures. I have no idea what's going on with her. So yeah, it happens.
Do you want my take on what that cloud is?
Yes.
I think it's a fart from God. So if you want
I'll
to keep
table
religion,
that
keep
one.
the windows shut.
I don't remember any odour, so maybe not. Yeah.
Elise, if I
Yes.
could just say on behalf of, I'm sure many people here, just thank you for giving us permission to dream again. We live in a world today when it's so hard to dream because everybody wants us to think instantly and immediately about everything that's going on, and not to pause, not to think, not to stop. And you've given us, through your work, the opportunity to do that. But I was going to ask you if you would share with everybody something you said to me earlier, which was about how this second book and these illustrations are about light. You talked about Dore at the beginning and how light impacted on their work and your reception of it. And I just wonder whether you could share what you feel about light, because just looking around now, just so many of these are about light and what light does to scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do find with lots of different books, I will pick a focus that's a personal challenge that I want to work on. But I find light to be transformative and highly emotional. So I'm someone, I can't bear overhead lights in my house. It's all lamps. And they're lamps hidden in weird spots, and I have to have the right configuration, and then it's like, now I'm okay. And I find light is amazingly emotional. And so, we don't perceive anything until there's light. It's the thing that defines volume, but also it can make things ethereal. It's just how everything is shaped. I remember this moment when I went to a few different art teachers, just kind of with little group lessons at different times. So one with a watercolourist, one with an oil painter. And I remember talking with the watercolourist, and he said, look up under that tree. And I looked, and I realised that the light was hitting the red earth, and it was bouncing up, and it was colouring the underside of the tree. And then he said, all right, and now look around. And I realised that everything was interplaying everywhere, and I just hadn't noticed how to see in that way before. And so I'm always completely blown away by the way that light and the way it plays with a scene changes it so dramatically. And it's also one of the biggest challenges when you're drawing with a black pen, to draw or to not draw. So, light is the absence of drawing. But, you're also thinking, well, when you see something that's really strongly silhouetted, how does that work? How do you convey that bleeding of light to swamp a subject when it's such a permanent thing that you're doing with all those marks? So it was an immense challenge. And I looked at lots of really talented photographers' work. So I can't remember his name. He was an amazing photographer in Hong Kong back in the 50s, I think. Hopefully someone knows. He was extraordinary. The light in his work was exquisite. And so I wanted to try and learn from that. So I spent a lot of time looking at his work and really trying to understand just the mechanism of light and how it could flow through a work and just touch the subjects you want people to see. That was a good challenge.
Thank you. You've produced pictures which don't have words. I hope at some point you will write about what you've just been talking about, seeing and drawing, because you have great wisdom there, and we deserve to share that as well.
Well, I think we have. We're just bombarded with fragments of story all the time at the moment. It's these little. We sit and we receive and we receive and we receive and we scroll and we flick and we watch things, and there is so little quiet space in our lives. Everything is occupied. There's always someone making content for you. So it's such a challenge to try and make a quiet space.
Brian makes a very good point, but I think you'd probably feel uncomfortable pinning people down with your own narrative, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The incomplete narrative is just part of
I
what
didn't
you...
mean the narrative about what the pictures were saying so much as
The theory.
your
but-
observations
yeah.
on observing,
Yeah.
because some of the things you've said this evening are very, very profound about observation and art. So, give us some notes on
Yeah, the illustration can transcend the narrative. Arthur Rackham was never pinned down by his story, whether it was his great Midsummer Night's Dream or Peter Pan or something. He took it to another level. In fact,
Absolutely
they
right.
can be just enjoyed independently, as your work is. And of course, they were supposedly for children because it was the children's gift book market before Christmas.
Yeah.
And the adults bought these beautiful books, and the children weren't allowed to touch them. Don't touch that, it's a vellum cover.
So, rub your fingers off that.
So it's work for adults, and quite right too. Did you want to say something? I kept
Well, I was just gonna
ignoring
say,
you,
I love
Fiona.
that green wash as well, and a wonderful exhibition. How do you do that? I mean, do you put the green wash on afterwards, or?
Yeah,
or-
yes I do. So
Yeah.
I use a pigmented waterproof pen, a lot of them, and so I do the tint afterwards with watercolour. So I found that if I do too many colours, it completely overwhelms the line work and it just becomes a colourful picture with some line work under it. So I really try to just do very limited numbers of
Yes,
colours
it's
and very limited palettes.
Very atmospheric. the
Yeah.
way that you've done that.
But I also want it to be somewhat incomplete. I want people to feel free to fill those colours in themselves, perhaps.
Thank you.
But I love that spot colour of just like, I'm just going to draw your attention here and here and just make it feel like some of them are strongly coloured. Well, there's a lot of colour. And frankly, they were terrifying because I'd already done all the drawing, and so if I stuffed it up, I was going to be pretty upset. But even then, it's still a very limited palette, which I find is key for doing this stuff. Yes, that
Can
was
I
tough.
ask,
Yes.
you've got cats in a lot of your pictures,
Mm.
and especially the one I've got, which is like hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah.
cats. And I'd like to ask, what's behind that? But I mean, it's well known that Australia doesn't really like cats because they cause such a lot of problems with the wildlife. But you obviously are okay with cats.
We have them inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
No, I know. So we had 2 cats, and they are in various pictures. They've been immortalised.
Is one of them the big fluffy one?
In the Cats in the Sea picture, there's a slightly dopey white and black one with his paw out doing that. That's one of them, and the other was a tabby. So yes, the giant cat god in the box.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I love it. It's in a
I mean,
box.
what else could it
That
have
is
been?
brilliant.
Yeah, it's not going to be on a plinth. It's going to be in a box.
Yeah.
Can I ask a related question? I
Yes.
mean, to an Englishman of my generation, Melbourne still feels like a colonial outpost on the way through to sophistication.
You can't have it.
Is it now the place for you to be?
Melbourne is good. Melbourne is great.
But for an artist, I mean, I don't mean swimming and stuff.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm a bit of a hermit myself, so I tend to just sit at home, do a lot of drawing. I'm not really in the
Could
scene.
be Malaysia, could be Kidderminster, could be.
I don't know. I'm being an illustrator. Australia is weird about illustration. I'm going to go
That's
out
what
on a
I'm
limb and
asking.
say that one. Yeah. So here you're all very intelligent people, and you understand that there is actually a bit of gravity to illustration, and that it is not just a little kiddie thing. That's, illustrators only get to sit on the little chairs and talk to the little people because you're doing children's books. It's a bit like that in Australia. It is not particularly well respected. There are very, very passionate people who get it, and they're fantastic. But in terms of, the establishment, in terms of the art world, illustration is not regarded with anything very highly. It's a bit sad. So it is immensely refreshing to come here and to see work that is outstanding and that is full of history and story and being actually really nicely regarded. And the thing so I said that I start off by doing traditional art. When the traditional artists I knew found out that I was starting to do illustration, my God, you should have seen how I felt in their estimation. That was a shock.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, really? And what they didn't realise is how much harder it is. Illustration is so much harder because you are taking everything that you know and then you are using that, restraining that, changing that to tell a story. And usually a story that has to happen over, 32 pages. And so each one has to actually carry you and propel you through the book. And it is this whole other beast that was, I before I started, I never realised how hard it was going to be. Because it is just, it's complex. And even things that you look at and you think it's very, very simple, it carries all of that with it. So yes, Australia and England, the UK, it's very, very different worlds, I think.
Thank you.
Unfortunately.
Australia has got great illustrators.
Oh, we have wonderful illustrators.
Your Ida Rintel-Uthwaite,
Maybe
Yes.
also
as you know, is. Did you?
Well, I was just going to add
Yes.
that maybe also the gift that Australia gives is the light
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
that
true.
you're talking about, because there is a very
That's
unique, bright
Yeah,
intensity of light.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Yes. Beware of that,
absolutely.
it fades the watercolours.
Yeah,
Ida Rintel-Uthwaite is known as the Arthur Rackham of
Yeah.
Australia. Well, I think she's been overtaken.
yeah.
You're the Arthur Rackham of
Oh,
Australia.
wow.
Rather
And I want more. I think you say it takes a long time. We'll just get down to work. You stay in your studio with your imagination
Yeah, I would
and
love
feed it
to
to
do
us.
more.
And that way you won't notice that the cats have diminished the kangaroo population.
I think the kangaroos can stand up for themselves. Yeah, they are.
Thank you
big
for coming
boys.
all this way. Thank you for that fascinating insight
Yes.
into your
Absolute pleasure.
your gentle, dreamlike mind. There's no violence here. It's such a change.
No, too much. There's a
and-
sword somewhere. The otter.
And
the
thank you
otter's
to
got a
the
sword.
very junior members of the gallery team for
Bravo.
asking such lovely questions.